Hello and welcome to the IP School. My name is Rohit, and in this video series, Python Programming for Absolute Beginners, we'll basically learn how to code in Python. Now, this video series is focused on people who don't know anything about programming or anything about Python. So, people like, network engineers, system administrators who, may or may not have experience working with any kind of a programming or a scripting language. So this video series will focus on people like those. So what we'll basically try to do is we'll learn the basic concepts of Python. I'll impart enough knowledge for you to go ahead and build on top of that, right? So first of all, what we want to do is, we will install Python in our systems, and how to do that right now is to go to python.org, and you could download, there are two versions available, Python 3 and Python 2. I recommend you to download Python 2.7 for this training, and we'll be using Python 2.7 for most of our stuff. So you can download it, and once you download it, you can pretty much install it like you install any other program. There is nothing very uh, crazy about this. It's as simple as that. Just install it once it finishes downloading. And what you can do, you can really pause the video right here and install Python, and once you're done with the installation, you can resume. All right, so what we'll do is, I hope you've installed Python. What we'll do, we'll basically open command prompt and validate our Python installation. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to type Python and use a switch capital V. This will give us the version of Python we are running, right? So I'm running 2.7.5. You'll be, you might have downloaded or might be running a different version. So there's no problem about that. So basically this will tell you which version you're running. If you're not able to, if this doesn't work for you, what you can do, basically, you have to edit the path environment variable and include your Python installation directory. So how to do that, I'll just guide you through that process as well. So right now, as you can see, the default location of Python is C, and C drive, Python 27 folder, right? So during installation, if you did not select any, if you did not specify an installation location, the default one is this, right? So let me copy this, C Python 27, and what we want to do is, we'll go to my computer, we'll right click on it, go to properties, and here advanced system settings, we'll click on this. Now advanced system settings, we have to tweak our environment variables, so we'll click on the environment variables tab, and in the system variables text area, what we have to find is the path variable, right? So the path environment variable, this one. I'll click on edit, right? I'll go to the end of this line, I'll put a semicolon, and basically put my Python installation directory. So C Python 27, this, right? A semicolon, and then your Python installation directory, and click OK, right? So once you do that, you will have to restart your PC, right? Once you restart your PC, this is going to work. Python will work from pretty much any directory, because we have set the environment variable, path environment variable, right? So once Python is installed, what you can do, you can start writing Python programs. But before we do that, for the sake of learning Python, what we'll do, we'll basically use Python's interactive interpreter. So what exactly is interactive interpreter? Interactive interpreter is basically a place where you can type in your statements and get a response immediately. So how do we launch that interactive interpreter? So if, for example, I'm on command prompt, I can type in Python, simply just Python, and then it will launch an interactive interpreter, right? So we see a prompt. So I can start writing my statements here. I can do something like 10 plus 10, and hit enter, and what I get is 20, right? So 20 is the answer, right? So I can do smaller statements. I can basically learn, we'll basically learn Python using this interpreter, and then we'll start writing full Python programs as well. So I can do something like print hello, and I get a response immediately. So this is not a place where we write our Python programs. We basically just send certain statements to the interpreter, and the interpreter basically returns us the result, gives us the result back, right? So so this was interpreter through command line. What will basically use the GUI interpreter, and once you exit the command prompt, if you've installed Python, you can type idle, and you can see this is the idle Python GUI. This is again the the interactive interpreter we had with command prompt, and you can do stuff here as well. 10 plus 20 30, print welcome, you get a welcome message, right? So this is the place where we'll basically start to learn Python. Now I will go ahead when we start writing programs. I'll tell you how to execute Python programs as well, but for now let's use the interactive interpreter. Also, let me really quickly tell you what would be the agenda of our this training series. So what we're going to do is, first of all, as we have already walked through the installation procedure, we'll see why would we want to use Python, right? And once we do that, we can straight away jump to the Python data types, and we'll see some other stuff as well. So this is the two things that we are going to cover in this particular video, right? So first question is, why Python? So Python basically is a full-blown programming language, right? So it can be used as a scripting language, but it's a complete programming language. So it's also used a lot in network automation, in a lot of system automation as well, and there are a lot of libraries actually that are already built for us to do that work. For example, if you are a network engineer and you want to automate your deployments or automate your maintenances, you can basically use modules that are already available in Python. For example, Paramico or pexpect, and a lot of those modules, you can use those modules to actually complete a lot of work very easily, and it's not about only network engineers. System engineers might find it very, very useful. It gives a lot more flexibility than using shell scripts, and again, a lot of things can be done in Python. So you basically, first of all, the very important reason is that the industry recognizes Python, and the industry has to offer a lot of functions, a lot of modules that you can use to basically speed up your automation, or your whatever you want to try to do. There are a lot of tools available, a lot of functions, modules available actually. So let's look at the various data types that Python has to offer, right? So very basics, there is integers, then there is float, and there is strings. For this video, we'll see what those different data types are, right? So an integer is simply a number, right? So I can initialize an integer in Python using a statement like, I first have to select a variable. I select a equals to 10, right? So now what has happened is, a is a variable the value of which is now 10, right? So there is one very neat function in Python which will tell me the type of that variable, right? So the function is type function. If I write type and pass this variable, what I get is, this is an integer, right? So also in Python, variables are dynamically typed. So if I say a equals to 20, it assumes a to be an integer. If I do a equals to 20.2, what will happen? 20.2 is a float. And if we check the type of this variable now, it is float. So I do not have to specifically, go ahead and say that a is an integer and then assign a value to a, right? Or a is a float and then assign a value to a. I can do that. I can do something like this: a equals to float, right? And then a is a float, right? It doesn't have any value right now, right? So but I can assign values to it, right? So this is a way, the highlighted portion of the text is a way I can, you know, define a variable, right? And this is, I put a value or initialize a variable, right? So this is not really necessary. It's not really necessary to initialize variables, but it's a good practice to actually initialize all your variables in the start of your program. Because why? It basically gives good readability. You know, once you're going through the program, you already know in advance what kind of, you know, variables you're using. So it all makes much sense if you do that. Makes program very readable. So um, so basically integers are defined as, you know, if you still store any non-decimal number, right? And say x equals to 5 and then y equals to 10, and you can do something like x plus y, right? So you can add an integer, add two integer values together as well. So you can do something like z equals to 10.2, and you can do x plus z, which will give you 15.2, right? So these are basically, x and y are integers and z is a float. Again, you can use the type function to check the type of that particular object, right? So we can pass on z, and z is a float, right? So this is as simple as it gets. You can, you know, define integers and define floats, numbers, right? So let's go to strings. So strings, similarly, you know, I can select any variable. Let me restart the shell. Now what I can do, I can select a equals to hello, and then if I check the type of this variable a, it is string, right? So one major difference is that, you know, in case of numbers, I do not have to specify any quotes, but in case of strings, I do specify some quotes. I do specify the value inside quotes. So does it mean if I do something like this, a equals to 100, you know, will it be a string or will it be a integer value? Now we can check that out, right? We can use the type function to check it. A is a string, right? So the value of a is 100, but since we have specified this value inside of quotes, this becomes a string, right? So anything that is inside a quote is a string. First of all, that's simple plain rule, right? And anything that's outside of a quote is an integer. You cannot do something like this, a equals to hello. That is not possible, right? You'll see hello is not defined. Why? Because we are not really specifying hello as a string, right? Only numbers, integers, floats can be specified without any quotes. Strings have to be in quotes, right? So if we have to initialize, if we have to store hello string in a, what we have to do, we have to use the quotes, right? And then we can print a and we get the message. We get, you know, the value of a, which is hello. So this is all about strings and numbers, integer and float, right? This is how we define those things, right? So once again, if you want to initialize a in the beginning of a string, an integer in the beginning of your program, you can use the integer function, right? You can check the type of a. It would be int. You can initialize b as a float, right? You can do type b, and you can initialize c as a string, you know, and when you do type c, the type of this is string, right? And then you can go ahead and assign values to those variables that you've already defined. A is equal to 10, b is equal to 20.1, c equals to, you know, Python, and things like that, right? So this is how we, you know, initialize and define our variables, right? So what we have seen right now is integers, floats, and string. In our next video, we'll see some integer operations, some, you know, string operations as well. I hope this has been informative. Please like my videos if it has been, and subscribe.